Hello, friends. I am so excited to introduce you to my friend Jeffrey James Higgins. He is an amazing thriller author. He is a former reporter, but most importantly, he is a retired supervisory special agent who has wrestled a suicide bomber, fought the Taliban in combat, and chased terrorists across 5 continents. He received the Attorney General's Award for Exceptional Heroism and the DEA Award of Valor. Yay to you, man. But as a writer, he has written thriller novels, short stories, creative nonfiction, and essays. He has been interviewed by CNN, the New York Times, Fox News, Investigative Discovery, Declassified, and USA Today, and I'm sure so many more. And Jeff has won numerous literary awards, including the Pencraft Book Awards, Fiction Book of the Year, and the Reader's Favorite Gold Medal. He is also a #1 Amazon bestselling author, and in a different podcast, he's going to teach us how you can be too. But welcome, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Hope. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to talk directly to your audience.
Yeah, and our audience is everyone, mostly readers, but also writers. So we're going to talk to the readers today, and I'm going to tell you a little backstory how I met him. So Jeff owns Elaine's restaurant, which is his wife's, he and his wife own this in Old Town Alexandria. It actually used to be Bilbo Baggins, and I got married there in 1995. So I love this property. It's sold, and now Jeff and his wife Cynthia have bought it. So it's a beautiful place. I ended up going back there for a women's networking event and got to talk to him. And so here we are. We created Elaine's Literary Salon as a podcast and video show, and I am so excited to promote all of the authors that come upstairs to have this beautiful event in which he does remarkable interviews with authors from all kinds of genres, from children's books to spy thrillers to just on and on and on. So welcome again, and tell us a little bit about the beginning. So where did you start? So you were a spy guy and now you own a restaurant. So how did you get from here to there?
It's helpful, I think, when people look back on their lives every now and then because you take some weird decisions, some weird paths, and seeing opportunity is really important. Sometimes you have to train yourself for that. But I wanted to be a writer my whole life. So I have books I wrote when I was 6 years old. 5, 6, 7 years old, where I do construction paper covers and write these anthropomorphized animals going on adventures, so I always wanted to do that. And my parents told me you can't make money writing books. And that was really prescient. It's really difficult to do that, as any writer knows. And then so they said, maybe work as a reporter or something. So I started as a reporter. I worked as a news editor. And then I was covering like the police beat. And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. And I was a big Robert Parker fan, with the Spencer for Hire novels. And I just thought this would be a really cool way to get some real life experience. So I started working as a cop. I was at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Tampa, Florida. And I got into a shooting in my training period in my first 3 weeks. I was in car chases all the time. I worked in a really bad area. So we had a lot of action, which was fun and is always good for like a 20-something-year-old guy. So I enjoyed that. And then I went into the federal government and I worked for over 20 years as a special agent. And I was doing transnational criminal groups and drug cartels and that kind of thing. And then on 9/11, I was one of the first 3 people to reach the North Tower after it fell down. And I was a Suffolk County DA investigator and a NYPD officer myself. And from that moment on, I was standing there in the rubble and I said, I'm going to investigate terrorism. Like, that's all I'm doing from now on. And that's basically what I did for the rest of my career. I went to Afghanistan and I was one of the first permanent agents to open up the office there. This was right after 9/11. And I targeted high value targets and Al Qaeda and the Taliban and a number of radical Islamic terrorism groups. And I put together prosecutable cases and developed intelligence. And based on all that work, we had the first narco-terrorism laws passed. And then I did the first arrest, indictment, and conviction under the new narco-terrorism laws. And so that gave us a tool, a way to like judicially go after some of these targets as opposed to just putting them in Gitmo or something. And so it was sort of a turning point in some ways for federal prosecutions of terrorists. And I did that for the rest of my career. And when I passed my 20 years, I said, you know what, it's time to start writing. So that's what I've been doing. Since 2017, I've been writing. I want to say full time, but I'm also working like, 60 to 80 hours a week at the restaurant. So I'm working a lot of hours, but I'm churning out quite a few books. I have three right over my shoulder. Three of them that are out now, and I have a four-book series that's coming out with Severn River Publishing. And that the first book launches in June, and there'll be two books coming out a year, two this year, two next year. And then we'll see where the series goes from there.
Holy moly. There's a million things to ask you about from that, right? But when I see you interview all these authors, you're always on point. You're always asking the most amazing questions. It goes to your profound intelligence and integrity. And I really appreciate that
Oh,
about
good. Tell me more.
well, it's not everyone that can do what you're doing, right? All right, so let's first talk about Elaine's. Go back to this restaurant that you and your wife own in Alexandria, Virginia, which is amazing. The food is amazing. Your wife is from Egypt, and the food is delicious. They're family recipes. So tell us about the origin story of this restaurant, how you all came to own this place.
So it's named Elaine's, and we're at 208 Queen Street. So we're right down in historic Old Town Alexandria. So we're a block from the water, and at the end of our street, you can see the U.S. Capitol. And Elaine was my wife's grandmother. And when my wife was 12 years old, she told her grandmother she'd have a restaurant someday and name it after her. So it took quite some time, but that's where that comes from. My wife's a real foodie. I mean, she's an author. She's published books. This is one of her nonfiction books right there, The Secret Apparatus. Just a brilliant book. It's required reading at DHS now. Deals with the Muslim Brotherhood. But she's a fellow at a think tank. She's worked for numerous think tanks. She's been a consultant with the FBI and DHS and a lot of federal agencies. Just really one of the most brilliant people on earth. And she's the world's leading expert on the Muslim Brotherhood. So she had food in her blood. She loves to cook. She's got that Mediterranean influence where, you show love through food, and which makes it hard, by the way, to stay in shape. She's a wonderful cook. So she created this restaurant. We took over in 2022 and spent about 9 months renovating. This was, like you mentioned, the old Bilbo Baggins. So it took a long time to bring it up to code after 4 decades. And so it's excellent now. It's really elegant. It's beautiful. We have a wonderful staff. And later this month, we're coming up on our 2 year anniversary. So that's really exciting. And the food's modern Mediterranean. So it's like Middle Eastern, but has French and Greek influences. And it's terrific. We have a great wine list. We have great cocktails, a beautiful bar downstairs. And I'm not a restaurateur. Well, I guess technically I am, since I've owned a restaurant for 2 years, but it's not really my passion. My passion is writing, but also interviewing authors. And when I saw this gorgeous space that we had, I mean, just really a beautiful space upstairs. I'm in the library portion, but we have 3 rooms upstairs. I just said, you know what, let's make this available to authors. So we don't charge them anything. We offer free space, and we let them celebrate their work, whether it's a one-on-one interview with me, which is usually what we do, or a panel, or they want to come up and have some kind of book launch party, whatever it is, however we can help, we do that. And of course, people know we're here if they come to a party, so we get something out of it. But really, it's a way to give back to the literary community. And talking with authors is so much fun. Like, it's this real solitary kind of endeavor. And a lot of times authors don't talk to other people, and they should have writing groups, and they should have beta readers, and they should go to conferences and communities, but not everybody does that. So it's really nice when I get to meet them here and sometimes provide guidance, because as a writer, I've made every single mistake possible, I think, since I've started. So I know the mistakes. So it's great to be able to share that, especially with new writers. And the industry changes all the time too. So if you're not really staying on top of it, like almost daily, you're not sure what trends and how the business works. But being up here and talking to authors is just so much fun. I mean, we get fascinating people from varied backgrounds, writing different genres, nonfiction, fiction, children's work, whatever. And, everybody's got something to say. And it's really interesting because story means so much to everybody. To hear how these authors, connect to it and what it means to them and why it brings them joy and why they feel this urge to write when it's so difficult to make money. And making money is the metric, but it's so difficult to be read. It's so difficult to sell more than 100 copies. The average self-published book sells, I think it's under 130 copies a lifetime at this point. So it's really difficult to be noticed and to put out good work.
Yeah, for sure. You know, as a journalist, I mean, nonfiction is my genre, and those are the books we promote through Incandescent PR, our publishing company, because there's a business behind it, and there's always money behind it. So I help people write their books, promote their books at Incandescent. Um, but you play in the fiction world, and that's a whole other game, but it's a beautiful game, right? And so, how do we honor and celebrate that? So, you know, one of the authors that we promoted through Elaine's literary salon is Timothy Trainer, who is a former IP attorney for the government, and he's written 7 books. 2 of the last ones are The China Connection and The China Factor. So, what I'm doing with him is not just creating his new website, but promoting what he knows about China. So, taking a fiction book and making it relevant to what's happening in the world at right now. So it's March 19th, 3:25 p.m. here on the East Coast, where Jeff and I are talking. So we're talking about what's happening in the world, but also what's happening in people's imaginations, which is really remarkable. And you have done such a fantastic job doing that. And I'm always blown away by your interviews. You hit the target constantly. And not only are we having delicious cocktails, martinis are the thing at Elaine. So that is part of the logo. And they're gorgeous. Like they're in gorgeous glasses, they're magnificent. But your team and the space really makes it an experience. So anyone who is in Alexandria, Virginia must come to Elaine's and see Jeff. But tell us more. Like my final question is tell us more about what you're seeing in the world of fiction, nonfiction, book publishing, and how people can get more involved and also be a more intelligent reader.
Well, the business has changed significantly, in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, and now with AI, it's changing like overnight. And we knew it was coming, but it's happening really fast. And you mentioned like, fiction writers versus nonfiction. I interview a lot of nonfiction and memoirists and, people who write books on leadership. I have a former admiral in here who did a book on leadership. We do a lot of that as well. But the interesting thing about fiction, and we're overwhelmingly fiction, I'd say probably 75% of the authors I interview write fiction. The interesting part is the themes they talk about and the things they talk about. A lot of times it like with Tim, it works directly with his expertise, so they're able to explore ideas, but do it through like a fast-paced story. And that makes it easier for people to digest. Like how many people want to pick up a 300-page book on like some academic topic, right? Like you have to have a very specific reason to do that. Personally, I like to do that too. Some people do, but not everybody does. When you do it through fiction, it's sort of like giving them candy over the medicine, right? Like it's a way to give it to them in a way. And interestingly, for like readers, it also allows them to like let their guard down. So it's a very polarized society in a lot of ways, left and right, and in it. But when you're reading fiction, it's made up, right? This is a story, so you don't have to like retreat to your like tribalistic corner. In a way, you can just like open yourself up and listen to the ideas. And through fiction, you're in the heads of characters, right? So you're inside them, looking out. So it's a way for those characters to show personally what they're thinking and why they're thinking that way. So a good author will steelman opposing arguments, that he or she doesn't even agree with. And if you do that through character, you can really show like kind of a balanced, approach to whatever it is, whatever theme you're talking about. But I have people in here, who are experts in physics, who are scientists, who are whatever, and it's so interesting to watch. And even the authors who don't have like that initial specialty, they've just been writers all their lives. The research they do is really impressive. They might go like deep sea diving to experience something full. They might go mountain climbing. Like I've talked to all of these authors who do that kind of thing. I think I've interviewed over 100 authors since we've opened here. I know it's over 100. It might be close to 150 at this point. But just to listen to their process and to listen to what it is they're trying to say, because everyone has something to say, and that's like this integral part of an author's voice. It's not just the prose that they use. It's just not the style or the pacing, but it's also like their perception and the way they perceive the world. So what an author through fiction is able to look at the world through their own lens in some ways, and that's really cool. So I get people from across a political spectrum, and it's really fun just to let them speak and hear what they think about the world and about their subjects. And if you're readers, like most of your audience is, I mean, some of these are really fantastic books. I mean, they're all interesting. They're all good. They have different points of advantage. But they're all really wonderful. So if you want to help, I guess that was your initial question, right? Like, how as a reader can you be involved? How can you help? You can help like by acting locally. You can help by supporting local authors. You can help by buying books from local bookstores. You can help by, if you buy a book, tell your friends about it. If you liked it, tell your friends about it. Go on Amazon and leave a 5-star review. Go on Goodreads and talk about it. It only takes a few minutes, but like if your readers knew how little writers actually make. In my head, I'm an old guy, right? In my head, I have this image of like the 1970s author going to book parties and being wined and dined by agents and publishers. And that world is gone except for just a handful of authors. The average, I believe, the average income for just writing for an author was, I want to say $8,000 somewhere. It was 12 at one point, and I know it's less than that, like annually for just writing. Like it's really, really tough. Last year in 2024, there were over 300,000 ISBNs issued, and that's like the number that they give for from each format of a book. But that doesn't include like people who just publish, like most self-published authors on Amazon. And so there's, the number, if it's 300,000 ISBNs, maybe that's 150,000 books or something. But then it's probably double that or more because of self-published books. So I think it's in excess of 3 million books a year being published. So it's really hard for authors to break out. There's so many choices, and that's just books. Then they're competing with Netflix and Hulu and Peacock and right all the other streaming services and all the other forms of entertainment. So if you find somebody you like, share it and help amplify their voice and read some of the other books they've done. I mean, everyone, I think the average person reads like a dozen books a year or something, but you don't have to read every book somebody's read, but if you like it, help them out because it's really hard to make it. And a lot of writers get discouraged. Like a lot of really brilliant writers get discouraged and they spend years sometimes writing a book, sometimes 10 years, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's decades. They write this book and they put it out there and 100 people buy it, and the book might be brilliant, but if they quit, no one will ever know who they are. And I can't tell you how many authors I've talked to over the last few years who broke out with a big bestseller on like their 10th or 12th book. Then people went back and went, oh my God, all this is amazing, but had they quit, nobody would have seen it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do book reviews for Costco's magazine and have since my daughter was born in 1995. So it's been a long time, and I get to interview these amazing authors. And who gets into Costco, but like people who's like Gregory Maguire. I had the privilege of interviewing him. He wrote Wicked. Just on and on and on. It's been spectacular to talk to them about their backstories. And to your point, a lot of them say, I never thought I'd make it, but then they did. Like, the woman who wrote the book about the paintings being stolen at the Forger Museum, and just on and on of those stories of what it takes, the tenacity. And yet, as a writer myself, we need to keep telling the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And at Incandescent, we do that. So sometimes it's about the money, sometimes it's about the business, but mostly it's about the integrity and the reason that we tell these stories, which are so important. And so I want to talk about your books. Go to Furious, Unseen, The Forever Game. Tell us the backstory of these characters and what that meant and why you wrote them.
So I write thrillers, but I write in all subgenre of thriller because when I have like high concept ideas or things I want to write, I have that urge to tell it, I just tell it. It's probably not the best way to build audience. I know the demographics of readership for my various books is very different. My first book was Furious, Sailing into Terror, and that's psychological suspense about a woman who lost her child and she's really despondent and suicidal. So her husband takes her on a cruise across the Indian Ocean to get her away from life and hopefully let her come to grips with things. And while they're on this cruise, bad things happen because it's a thriller. But that book's won, I think, 8 awards. It's still, I believe it's still my publisher's number one best-selling thriller. That was from 2021. And then I wrote Unseen, which is a crime thriller. And that's based on a real life terror conspiracy, it's a very authentically written book because my wife is an expert in that area. And that's what I did for a living for 20 plus years. So that's a lot of fun if you like crime fiction. Again, a different audience and like psychological suspense. And then The Forever Game was a book I wrote about. It's like near future technology. It's about artificial intelligence. And I got that out on Leap Day last year. So it's just over a year old. And it's coming true so fast. Like it's a fast-paced thriller, so there's personal stakes and it's a story, but the actual AI that they're using, like I had to get the book out because it's really coming true. And then I've got a 4 book series, the Nathan Burke thriller series with Seven River Publishing that comes out in starting in June. And the first book is called The Havana Syndrome. And I just got a starred review from Library Journal, so I'm really excited about that. It hasn't published yet, but it will. And so yeah, I'm excited about those books, and I have a whole bunch of psychological suspense manuscripts. I've got 2 that are finished that I had with publishers, and I pulled them, and I'm looking to get a new agent, which is a long process all by itself, and publish those because psychological suspense. And I write a lot of like female characters in austere environments and female in jeopardy type of thrillers, and they're really fun. I've been surrounded by so many strong women my whole life, and they've just inspired me in so many ways that not all my books are female protagonists, but several of them are, and I really like that, especially in writing about psychological suspense.
It's amazing, right? This idea of going deep down inside and sharing what you know through this process. I've always been afraid to write fiction. Actually, I think I would go down into the tubes of like someplace else and wouldn't come back out. So I stay in the nonfiction realm and
That's
promote.
dark, Hope.
It's dark. It's dark, baby. But I know myself well enough to know where to stay. I've written a couple of fiction things, but I'm very excited to work with you and talk more about what this process looks like and how we can honor more writers, especially as we're in this time of change in the country and in the world, right? So 2025, March 19th, what will the future look like? I think that writers, people who have imagination and are sharing that with others is the key, right? That I think will never go away. So what do
No,
you,
I agree. I agree. I mean, writing and imagination, it provides escapism for people. It's a vehicle for them to be able to learn things. It's entertainment on the most basic level, but it's more than that. Like we're seeing AI now. There's a new AI that's coming out. It might be one of the Chat GPT versions, but apparently it's writing really good fiction at this point. I haven't seen anything good yet, but I know some of the things it will get good. It'll at some point it'll be indistinguishable from humans writing, but it'll never be human, right? So even though a story may be good, AI will never know how to actually experience the things a human experiences. So they might come up with great high concepts and have fast pacing, and I'm sure it'll be very, very formulaic and probably produce good stuff. But if there'll always be room for writers, for human beings to write about things they're experiencing and the human experience. It is just different than AI. So while AI will certainly transform the industry, I mean, it'll transform it significantly. It's going to happen within 5 years. It's going to change it very, very rapidly. But I think there will always be room for human writers. And I know the Authors Guild has recently issued a badge saying it's like human written or something like that, or human generated. And it's a badge. So, if readers want to read something that another person who shares their experience in life has written, they can go for one of those badges. And I actually think that's a good idea. I mean, so far all the AI stuff I've read is just sort of it's shallow, and it's very formulaic and it's overwritten and it's bad. But being able to hear from another human being who's had we all experience the same kind of human emotion, but we experience it in different ways, and everybody's story is different. Interestingly, that's why just about everybody I meet says, "Oh, I'm going to write a book when." It's one of those things where like, what other art? Like, artists don't meet people who say, "Oh, I'm gonna paint this picture or sculpt this thing." It happens, but not often. But I saw a study the other day. It was 90 something percent of people say they are plan to write a book, and then of them, 3%, I believe, actually do start it, and only 1% of them actually finish it, or roughly those stats. Like, so it's a very small number of people who actually sit down, write the book, and then finish the book. And then of those, it's a very small percentage that are read by more than 100 people. It's really difficult. But storytelling is deep in our genes. It came through evolution. So that's how that's how one caveman told the other about the mammoth, right? Like they would tell stories, and And that's how information passed down from generation to generation. And it wasn't just facts, it was told in the form of story because we remember story. So you're actually built, physiologically built, right, to accept story, to hear it, to remember it, and to experience it. And they've done studies where people are watching something on TV or hearing a story, and they're releasing the same chemicals as a person actually going through that. So it really is a way for us to engage our empathy and to understand what people are going through, which is probably why it's such a good learning tool. Even if you disagree with something a character's doing, you can understand why they're doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean the power of story, right? That is my life. And you know, AI doesn't scare me because it can't replicate humanity. No, not yet, and maybe not ever. So my ex-husband is a brilliant illustrator and designer. My daughter is a photographer and videographer. My son is finishing his master's in architecture at Harvard. So, I am a family of creatives, and my sister's a chef. There is no way to replicate this, and there's no reason for it. So I can understand why people who can't create want to have somebody else do the work for them. But I think we're at this juxtaposition, right? Don't you think, Jeff, that humanity will survive? You and I have had some courageous conversations about politics. We're on the opposite sides of the spectrum, but I think, well, I appreciate you, and I'm awed by how sophisticated your interviews are. With you can just go wherever anyone is and really share that with the audience. And there's a bunch of us sitting right where you are at the table at Elaine's, and it's amazing. It's a magical experience. And so we're trying to translate some of that through Elaine's literary salon, through incandescent radio and incandescent TV, so that more people can be a part of this, and hopefully they'll come and enjoy this magical food, which is fantastic, right? Like you have to try those Brussels sprouts and those martinis and more of the food. And experience Jeff and Cynthia, right? So it's that humanity I can't get past, right? I don't think we're going to stop being humans given any tech or any politics. We're
Yeah,
going
well, you make a good point, right? Because there's commonality in humanity. In Americans, even if you're far left or far right or libertarian like myself, right, wherever you are, you still share like 90% of values in history and things you care about. Like we share so much more than these little points of division. And in the restaurant industry, like this is a politics free place. I mean, I've had serious political leaders, I mean, from the White House on down in here from both the left and the right. And when people ask me, I just tell them, how about we just share our love of food and camaraderie and enjoy being, together? Like, I don't know about anybody else. I am exhausted by the constant politics. Like I really am. Like, if you're not a policymaker or you're not influencing a policymaker or writing a law or in a think tank or something, you don't have to think about this stuff all the time. Like I don't think it's healthy, to be honest with you. Like I think, and I was an elected official. I was a commissioner in DC. Like I mean, I've been in politics and I've studied a lot of political theory and history, but it doesn't affect my daily life. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it does, and the policies do affect you in some ways, but how about we just focus on positive things? And, that's one of the things that like story does and fiction does. It's escapism, and it's ways just to, however bad a day you had, you can grab that book and curl up on the couch and read this book and escape into a foreign land or someplace you've never been or experience something in a different way. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It is the answer, right? And that is what we're doing. So I was here last weekend. So Assignment in Saigon by Bill Rapp, talking on the billionaire. I was there. That's like a sexy book. And then you had I was so excited to meet Robert McGee, who has 13 doctorates and he's a world champion taekwondo. And it's amazing who you bring into the restaurant and who we have the privilege of listening to their, not just their books, but the conversation that you have with them. So I'm excited to have millions of these conversations. Teacher Boy was the most recent one, and I'm excited to promote what Michael is doing. So there's so much good story. And to your point, we just have to stay positive. I tend to be one of those people that is reading everything and it kind of takes me down because fair, what is fair and what is just is core to my being.
Mhm.
So I'm not feeling that right now in the world. But what I do love is coming to Elaine's literary salon and hearing these amazing, amazing interviews that you're doing. So please, everyone, check out Elaine's Literary Salon on Incandescent Radio and incandescent.tv. It's elaine's.tv. We bought the URL for that. So please check us out. Check Jeff out. Definitely read his books. They are fantastic. Check out Cynthia's books too. And we're going to talk more actually. Next, Jeff is going to teach us how to get your book to be a #1 bestseller, just like his. So
It's
that's
so easy, right? Yeah.
that's going to be a class. So stay with us. We're going to be back for more interviews as life goes on. So thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Jeff. Tell us the address and the URL so that everyone can come and check you out.
It's elaine's-restaurant.com, and we're at 208 Queen Street. So it's right downtown. We're a block from the water near the torpedo factory in the historic neighborhood of Old Town Alexandria.
Beautiful. And you can mostly park for free. So we'll see you there. Meet you at Elaine's. Thank you.
Thanks, Hope.